Hope for the future, some frustration in the present, and as many questions as answers in last night's 3-2 victory over Latvia. I'm Aidan O'Hara. I'm joined by soccer correspondent Daniel McDonald on Independent.ie. And Dan, that seemed like the sort of game we've seen a few times before under Kenny, albeit with a positive result in the end.
Yeah, I suppose if you think about it, the last, not the last Aviva Stadium game there, but the last competitive game there, albeit this one was a friendly, was a 3-2 against Armenia, where you sort of walk out of the place more so confused than convinced. And I think it was a bit of that. I don't know. I will say, right, it's a strange old game. Like, most of there's a lot of excitement around Evan Ferguson coming in and certain aspects of it, but the whole game is played to this sort of home of discussion, of people talking to each other. This opponent who lets the back three have the ball for long periods, and yet the Cardiff are so comfortable in some ways, and yet in others they were sort of so sloppy and so unconvincing. And yet you're there going, okay, you want to draw some link from this to the France game, and there are things we can talk about that you can make relevant to it. But in saying that, you're just going, like, there's going to be such a completely different level of intensity in the France game, where probably every tackle will be cheered. Every sort of action by a player will have. You feel like there's going to be this roar around it, whereas these games, like, Ireland just aren't ever particularly good at dealing with them. But that doesn't excuse mistakes that are made within that. But it's just, like, I feel like naturally you have to review the game. There's interesting aspects of it, but I feel like within the camp, and I could be wrong about this, I feel like this game is dead by Thursday lunchtime, and it's all about that lead-in time to France. But there's still things to talk about from it.
Like, we often talk about players playing their way into games, or into squads, into teams, but Matt Doherty looked so rusty in the game that you wonder whether he's played his way out of the game on Monday.
I don't know. I think Matt Doherty will play. I accept the point, but I think Matt Doherty is, particularly against better teams, is so confident on the ball that I just think Kenny will pick him. Seamus Coleman missed the game with a slight strain. We found out afterwards he could play Alan Brown there, but I just don't see it as a realistic scenario. I think, in fact, he was taking Matt Doherty off to protect him rather than in any kind of concern. But I understand the point. I think, like the game confirmed, you need Josh Cullen to have any kind of effective midfield. Just in terms of, like, someone who can actually receive the ball and just turn out comfortably. I think Jason Malumbi's he's good on the ball, Malumbi, but he's not a six in that sense of sitting there like he can. In fact, I thought Brown in midfield, he had the odd moment breaking forward, but just wasn't terrific. It just, like, the spine of the team, I think it's clear, will probably be different on Monday. I think Bazuna will certainly play. I think John Egan. I think the change in the second half was probably significant, with Egan coming on, with Collins shifting out, and Moba Medele going off. I think that's a reflection of what the back three will be on Monday. Certainly, I think Kenny really regards Moba Medele. I think long term he's a real option for the right of the three, but I don't think he's ready to play there at the moment after sort of the interrupted preparation he's had to this. So they were the little things you took from it. It was maybe, as you like, not so much people playing the way out of it as more so confirming that they won't be playing, I think. But no, I think Doherty will play. And O'Dowda, I think, will start.
O'Dowda, you think will start as well? That was going to be my next question. I mean, he was like, he was strong going forward. There was good aspects to his game, that, the sort of athleticism, but also with a bit of, comfort on the ball that you think they're going to need on Monday when they're not going to have as much of the ball. So, whatever ball they do get, they're going to have to use wisely.
Yeah, I think sometimes with O'Dowda, I think in that type of game, like when the back three have the ball so much, you're looking at your left wing back, and often you're looking where he's going to receive the ball, and sometimes he receives it and he passes the ball inside. And I didn't think he was incredibly comfortable at times, in terms of how he received it. Yet other times, like, he opened up, and I thought the pitch was playing quite slow. Actually, I think that was quite evident. I think, presumably, like, they've had the rugby, they've had the rain. And there was a couple of times where the ball wasn't really fizzing around the place, and I kind of wondered one or two of them were even just the pace of like judging passes and receiving passes and running onto them. Like that was just a little bit sloppy and stodgy at times too. But I think without doubt, like it's such a different skill set that would probably be asked of him against France. Like it's going to be more his ability to cover ground off the ball and not so much his ability to sort of receive the ball at times himself. They're probably going to still try to play out against France, of course. And as we know with Ireland, like there are still moments and like where they just don't look particularly comfortable playing the ball out. Like they don't just some of the positions that they take aren't fantastic. And I think Cullen is actually quite important to that in terms of, as I said, knitting some of it together. Just the way Kenny's speaking, though, and I think this was probably obvious. I think after November, for me, I couldn't understand some of this outrage about the squad, Ryan Manning not being in it, and all this stuff. Like, it was clear after November, O'Dowda was probably going to play going forward, and I think that's been confirmed by everything that's happened subsequently.
Yeah, I think the one decision on Monday, we've managed to get through 6 minutes without mentioning him, is Evan Ferguson. Almost certain that he starts Monday. Dan, any doubts on that front?
I think he will, but I think certainly there's questions there as well. Like he played Ferguson and Obafemi in a front two. Obafemi again is coming off not playing a huge amount of football. Like people talk about Evan Ferguson's goals naturally because he's like that's what excites us. But it's clear, I think, the early signs are with Ireland that we're going to see a lot more of his play outside the area. Now we do see that with Brighton, the way that they play too. But the question is, like we talk about Ferguson leading the line, is he actually going to lead the line for Ireland? Like in the sense of being the forward most attacker, or is it a case that Ferguson may always play in the short term with an Obafemi, or more likely possibly even an Ogbene against France? In the sense that like we're going to see him do more what Troy Parrott did as being that link player between midfield and attack. We talk about him as this striking star coming along, but is it possible that in the short term or even the longer term, like he may not always be in the area in terms of what's asked of him. So I think that is significant, and it's something like we have to be conscious of in the analysis of Ferguson. Like I think that balance he has to play, but I think who plays around him to me is still a big talking point.
Yeah, I think De Zerbi has talked about that at Brighton even just last week, about playing him as a 9 or a 10, how good he is in terms of learning those positions. Like there was a shot he had in the first half. Now it went well over the bar, but he found himself in that position of dropping off to receive the ball. I think it might have been from O'Dowda, and he was kind of standing there for a few seconds where, another centre forward would have taken it and just charged into the box looking for a header, but he managed to find himself that little pocket of space to get a shot away. It's interesting though, like how it's going to play out on Monday. Where do you see is likely? Do you think him or Smallbone maybe to play that kind of 10 role that kind of drops into midfield and they don't have the ball? I mean, Smallbone was excellent. Was excellent in the game.
Smallbone was excellent. I think Smallbone. I don't think Kenny's had this like cause célèbre type figure during his time. I think I mentioned it today, but I do think Smallbone has the capability to become that in the short term. If he's not on the team sheet on Monday, I think there's a chance he isn't. Now I think he's put himself in the discussion firmly, but Kenny said afterwards that Josh Cullen and Jason Knight were held back with Monday in mind. Now Cullen, that's an obvious one. I think we know that. I think Knight is the one where he's definitely, like the way he's talking, like if they've held him back with Monday in mind, it would represent an about turn to not play him. So like they've had this midfield three in some of the games in the last year that worked quite well with Cullen, Malumbi, and Knight. Knight is often that player that is the link player between the midfield and attack, as you mentioned, dropped in, and sometimes Parrott as well, right? Sometimes it's been the three of them plus Parrott, and it's Parrott more to the left side and Knight a little bit more to the right side. Now, there was a great little link-up between Smallbone and Doherty and nice little moments, but I just suspect that he'll play those three again, Knight, Malumbi and Cullen, and then it may well be that it's Ferguson and is it potentially Ogbene. That could be, or Obafemi, and Ogbene probably offers a little bit more defending from the front. He can shift out to one side and maybe cover a French fullback, in a more effective way than you think Obafemi might. So that's the way I'd be thinking at the moment. And I think Smallbone's put himself in the discussion. But if he's going to play Knight, the alternative is that Malumbi comes out. But I think Malumbi is a big disruptor from in these games. So I think he could be the 12th man, which is has now got the potential to be slightly contentious because you can see how good he is. What I do definitely think is that later in the year, these games for Ireland struggle against teams at home, Greece at home, that type of unlocking a defence team, unlocking an opposition defence type of game. I think he's definitely going to play in those ones. I'm just not sure if he plays straight away in this one.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, speaking of potential cause celebrities, Mikey Johnston come off the bench and lovely little cameo where you got the crowd to maybe stop talking for a minute and come to the edge of their seat with some great quick feet, and he looks like a player. Is there anyone that we don't have, a type that we don't have?
Yeah, I think in fairness, you can you can debate Kenny ad nauseum about everything. I think Johnson certainly delivered what Kenny had promised, I suppose, and highlighted why he wants him in the squad, because he doesn't think he has dribblers. He doesn't think he has people who can really travel like that and take people on. In fact, the game just lacked that at times because there probably was space that was there for people to run into. Like you mentioned, that even the Evan Ferguson one a couple of times where Latvia were happy to let them do that, and they probably just stood off Johnston and almost weren't expecting it, and were punished. So I think for me, it's pretty clear where Johnston's going to sit into the campaign. I think he's going to be an impact sub a lot. I'm not sure how many games he starts, maybe against some of those lesser sides. But I think he is going to be the 20 minutes to go when you're chasing a goal. I think that's where he's definitely going to have a role to play.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's great to be talking about it again. Dan, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back on Monday in independent.ie to look ahead to the big one when we're in host France. So we'll talk to you then.
Thank you.